Punto 12 all'ordine.
Item 12 on the agenda, report on the fact-finding visit to Spain. We're going to hear from Mr. Boulan on this. You've just got 3 minutes, please, if you could keep it short. Thank you. Yes, Madam Chair. Well, I'm going to take fewer than 3 minutes because I think that we are awaiting your decision on the implementation of Article 52. Just let me remind you that the Petitions Committee is a committee which listens to the petitions of European citizens. And we have to listen to all that is said. And as soon as we send out a fact-finding mission, in other words, we look into the facts of the case, and I, in my report, have emphasized the fact that it is important to really ensure that we have the facts right. There were certain things which the petitioners were quite rightly complaining about, sometimes running contrary to the arguments put forward by the local authorities. And it's quite right to take this into account. And I feel that one should be as objective as possible. And I do think it is absolutely essential that we listen to the voices of the petitioners and link those up to the responses of the authorities, of course. In my report, you've received copies of it, there is a description of the facts in connection with the RIAs. We didn't take in petitions which weren't officially agreed upon by all the delegation and coordinators before we left. We looked into certain issues and put aside certain things that have been around for quite a long time that we'd looked at, on pollution, for example, or the problem of non-treatment of wastewater and rainwater, things which had been dealt with by water purification plants covering the whole of the population. The EU's interventions have become more and more positive. They're recognized as such. Things have improved. It's not perfect, but what the authorities have suggested seems to be such as to be able to respond in the end to the legitimate concerns of the petitioners. So that's just a very general, broad overview. And I think in September, when we come back after the break, following the decision taken relating to the adoption of this document, we're going to have another discussion on this subject, and so we can go into more detail then.
First of all, I have the question to the Secretariat. We have just now received the text. Yes, draft working document dated 4th of July. We received it just now. For me, it is the first time I see this text. Although it is dated by 4th of July, I did not see this text. I had the text, and here is my name, you see, as a member of the delegation. I am not ready, and I think no one is, apart maybe Monsieur Boulan, to speak on this text. Because I had just another text distributed to me as a member of delegation and to Angelika Werthmann by Mr. Boulan. And we had to discuss it on Monday in Strasbourg. It is not true that we were not ready. Monsieur Boulan, nous avons vous donné le temps à 2 heures et nous sommes plus loin de Strasbourg que vous comme membre. Et vous n'avez pas accepté.
And you didn't accept that. You said that at 6 o'clock in the evening this had to be wound up.
Secretariat, how does all these documents appear? Because in previous discussions there was only one document submitted to Secretariat, tabled by Angelika Werthmann and me, then not official text, just the draft submitted by Mr. Boulan, and now we have the text. I don't know why dated by not today but 4th of July. Today we have 9th of July, but first time I see this text.
I already informed the committee that the text was distributed on Friday. I received a confirmation from the Secretariat. It was sent by email to all members. So you received it on Friday. This is the timing and nothing else. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think that we're really putting pressure on the procedure here, and I don't understand exactly why. I don't know what's going on. So what I would suggest is the following. The text proposed by Mr. Boulin, full stop. This is not the text of the delegation to Galicia. They were three, two deputies and the chair. Now, this is the text. This is not the text of the delegation. So I should like to ask our colleagues to come up with a text for us. Those two, if they don't agree with Mr. Boulon. If there's no consensus between the three of them, let's have a text from the two of them. And then at least I, could take on board what I think is most in line with reality. I don't share with what I don't share the ideas of what have been expressed.
As far as I can follow, there's not been a cooperation on the text between the participants, the formal participants. Yeah, but you hadn't had the chance. And I think that the text only presented, even if it's sent out by email a few days ago, in the weekends, without discussions, without a try to find solutions together, this text is not representing the delegation, but only the chair. And in my opinion, we need to have a text where we can see what is the impression for the three participants, not only one participant.
Martinez. Chairman. Well, I am responsible for dealing both with our colleagues and with the petitioners, and quite honestly, I really haven't ever seen a situation such as this. We've had reports, very difficult reports to draft. What I want to do is to express the fact that this is a very abnormal situation. It seems to be rather unprecedented. And here, people are saying that, yes, we've got a delegation, and, well, a delegation can or cannot agree with a report. It's always difficult to draft a report, and thus far, we've always seen people making major efforts to ensure that those who are part of the delegation agree, but it may occur that there is a report where the majority agree and the minority don't. So if we've got a majority report and minority report, well, we've got the members of the committee here to look at this, and we'll look through the text and decide which one that we would prefer. I'm rather upset about all this. It's of concern to me. So what's the reaction going to be of the citizens who are here? Goodness me. What's going on? I think that, once again, so we said we've got a delegation of three, and there are two members who think one thing and one who thinks the other, so it's 2-1. And the one person has got the right to submit a report which is different to the report of the majority. And I must say that I'm absolutely dumbstruck by this situation, which is occurring for the first time. The coordinators reached a certain agreement, and the coordinators, what's that mean? The coordinators of all the groups. So we're suddenly finding ourselves here in a situation of when we vote, what has supposedly been decided by all the coordinators, and we can't say this is one group. All the other groups are saying that they are in a minority to their own coordinators, and they can ask for the coordinators to resign if the people in the group don't support them. I mean, honestly, this is a pretty mad situation. Yes, I want to support the chair here and the proposals which are made. On the other hand, of course, we have a document which has been disseminated to us, and this document which I have here is Mr. Boulin's document, and I have great respect for him. Nevertheless, it's quite obvious that this is not a document which has been drafted by the 3 members of the delegation, because there are 2 members who do not agree with this report. And this is something which needs to be stated in this report. This is the report which we can't make public. We can't circulate it, a report with the 3 names of the delegation. We suppose that they're drafting it, but in fact what the case is, what the situation is that 2 of them are against it. So I don't mind, we can agree with this one or with another document which is submitted, but what we've got here is something which really does not tally with the truth.
Ja, danke schön, Frau Vorsitzende.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, I should like to apologise for coming here late, but I had to chair a briefing, a discussion on a particular type of disease. Now, I must say that we really did do our utmost to reach compromise, but we failed in certain details. And I don't actually think this is a particularly brilliant procedure. My colleague Tatiana and I believe that during the course of our discussions, our statements, and what we actually saw has been represented in an objective manner. And I think this is the task of a report. First of all, we have to make reference to what we actually saw, and then we have to describe those things as they appeared to us. It's not a question of interpretation. It's not a question of requirements. We can always work those into the recommendations. So I should like to turn to colleagues who need to be convinced that say that Tatiana and I didn't want to compromise. It is not true. We have been objective, and it is our job as politicians to actually make people aware of the facts. Now, if we're asked what our personal opinion is, that's something quite different, but this is not something which is under discussion. We are the Petitions Committee. And I can only repeat what I said previously. As Petitions Committee, we are supposed to deal with petitions and not party politics. I would never allow my party to influence me in such a way as to put me in a situation where the petitioners or the petitions would suffer. Obviously, at the moment, we can't reach agreement. That's clear. Thank you, Miranda.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Chair. Well, in the middle of all this toing and froing different positions, I want to point out that we've been discussing this for 5 months. In February, we've seen so much coming in, so many complaints coming in from petitioners. We've been actually tackling this issue for a long time. A lot of things are coming into my office from petitioners now, and they're asking us what the heck's going on. We're getting bogged down into an administrative procedure and an interpretation of this regulation, and we're leaving aside the substantial issue, which is the cleaning up of the RIAs. And we need to pass on a political message to show everyone that this committee is useful for something. As you know, Mr. Boulan, you went to Galicia, and you were there in order to look objectively at what was going on, and now your credibility has dropped. Why? Because you've got to listen to other people. I don't know what others think about this, but I know what's going to happen. I'm wondering what Mr. Boulan's image is going to be, because he seems to have ended up just submitting to political opinions and political pressure and following the political interests of his party. There's no dialogue. There's a lack of transparency. Yes, it's true. And turning to the Secretariat on this, all the positions which have been adopted, and particularly all the hopes of our citizens, have fallen. Why? Why? Because of administrative comings and goings, administrative burdens, and you, Chair, I think once and for all have to realise the value that we are supposed to demonstrate to citizens. And quite honestly, at this juncture, we have to take a decision on a report because our citizens, many petitioners, are waiting for a result, and the substantial issue, the problem of the RIAs, has not been solved. It's easy to say everything's okay, there's just been a lack of transparency, a lack of dialogue, but as rapporteurs, in the end, we have to realise that this is a delegation of 3 official members, and this is just not acceptable. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, perhaps, okay, we can just go back and do something for our citizens. Thank you, Miranda. Thank you very much. Well, I really do regret very much that once again we're getting bogged down in a discussion on rules of procedure. And I must say that this is not an issue relating to voting on the report. We don't want to mix these things up. We've got 2 parts. We've got the second part, which are the conclusions, which we vote on in the committee. Now, the first part, the so-called descriptive part, we agreed that this descriptive part had to be subject to consensus. Consensus, I say. Consensus. Now, here, listen, please. Consensus means everybody, Margaret. Consensus means everybody. Everybody has to agree. And we can't start thrashing the Secretariat. The Secretariat is there to help us. There are members, however, and members have to agree. And it seems as though this has not happened. Now, why? Why? I can't accept this. So, we have to realise that there is no agreement. And this is why we discussed yesterday, we discussed this again this morning, and if we don't get agreement, it won't work. So we did say expressly that the descriptive section, where the members get together and actually describe what has happened, is something which cannot be voted upon in committee, because most members were not even there, so it wouldn't be fair. So that's where we say that descriptive part has got to be subject to consensus, and consensus means 100% of participants. So I hope this is an end of it. I hope that we'll end up with conclusions and some kind of consensus if we send out fact-finding missions with just 1 member. We've got to get consensus, but if it's not subject to consensus, then we're going to have to go back to the procedure that we've been discussing this morning. And quite honestly, I think the responsibility lies on the shoulders of the chair. It's something I regret a lot. A fact-finding mission, as we have heard, is supposed to speed up the petition process. And what we are finding at the moment is absolutely the contrary. So, please, please, all of you, do get together, do agree, but realistically speaking, we do have to provide for a situation where there is no consensus. But consensus means that everybody has to agree. Yeah, we had 3 participants.
Sí, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Well, I think that the best way to approach this issue is not to start criticising here and there, but to shoulder our responsibility. I was in the delegation was in Galicia in February, and at that juncture I thought we'd have come up with a final solution, and we're still here discussing this report which has been presented to members of the delegation. I think that what we are doing is complicating something which should be easy rather than tackling the substantial issues. Now, what I should like to say on behalf of the Socialist Group is that I don't feel there's any barrier to our seeking a reasonable solution. So we're quite happy to cooperate to ensure that that happens. But I do think what is important is that if a particular problem has arisen in the eyes of the delegation, well, what we're seeing here I think is quite clear, and we shouldn't complicate matters more than they're complicated already. I think that we have to achieve consensus, and the other 2 issues which we have to deal with are quite clear. We sent a very clear message to the Spanish and Galician authorities that are responsible, saying that they had to comply with European law. And at the same time, we have to ensure that we offer European support, European funding, European resources in order to make that feasible. And I do think that at this juncture, we shouldn't be dwelling on this too much further. Thank you very much, Chair. Well, we seem to be getting bogged down in all this, but I know why this is. We have a document here which was disseminated a couple of months ago by the Secretariat without the authorization of the Chair, and then month ago, the other two members of the delegation circulated a document as well without asking the chair, and then the president of the chair is circulating his own document. Well, quite honestly, this is not a serious way of doing things, is it? I really don't think it is. Secondly, well, Mr. Boulon, I'm sure, has tried to reach consensus. We know has been trying to talk this through. Therefore, I think it's going to be difficult to get consensus. A fortnight ago, Chairman, I saw it to be something impossible. It's important, of course, then that we look at Article 52. But what we do want, above all things, is an objective, well-balanced report, positive for the authorities, positive for Galicia, positive for the citizens, positive for the European funds. Because we need to do something for the Rias and their water. So, please, Mr. Boulon, he's the chair. He should be presenting a document. He should have done this a couple of months ago, but he didn't get consensus. And constantly, what we've seen is a total mix-up. Thank you very much. So now, once again, we've got people asking for the floor, but let us not forget we have petitioners present who want to present their petitions, which are on the agenda. So please, Mr. Zanoka, Boulon and Orca, and that's it. Zanoka.
Thank you. First of all, on the document. First of all, you see that the first part, including conclusion remarks, is in English, yes? And that was just the text we had last Monday to discuss with Mr. Boulon. Now we have just distributed on Friday something new which includes recommendations written in French, what we could not, even if working all weekend, realize with Mrs. Werthmann. Also there are our names. In what concerns, so I am not ready to discuss these recommendations, although I can read French. And unfortunately, my colleague has difficulties. But in what concerns conclusions, yes, we were ready for consensus, but honourable members of delegations, if we take this text presented by Mr. Boulon, that there was no sense to go to Galicia, because here is completely rejecting all concerns of petitioners. For example, for the plant of Reganosa, only sentences that it was put it in place according to Spanish law. No concerns that there are 50 meters from house. Yes. So there was not possible to reach a consensus where approaches of the chair, which is rejecting all concerns of petitioners, and our approach, which support petitioners, was ideologically and politically different. Therefore, that is the disagreement.
Mrs. Soken.
I will suggest that we ask the legal service of the interpretation of the rules for delegations, because it's clear that somebody here thinks that the chair has the dominating role and can decide if there's no agreement. According to what I can read in the rules, there's no word about that. And there, because we had to follow the suggestion from Martinez, saying that we need a majority. There's no word in 202 about the leader. Nothing. Even if you referred to it yesterday, Peter, you couldn't read what was in the text. It was text the participants, not the leader. And if we still continue to quarrel about this, I think we should ask legal service how is the interpretation of the rules for the delegation? Is it just the leader who has to decide the descriptions, everything, or are the participants part of this whatever? So couldn't we please send it and then stop this debate with each other? Because I would not accept that we have a political interpretation of the Rule 202.
Thank you. Boulon, the last one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do understand the the interests of defending the citizens, and I think that, of course, that's quite obvious. But, having said that, the fact-finding mission is there to listen to the citizens, and we've given the maximum possible speaking time to citizens. We ask the authorities to respond to certain questions afterwards, so that we prioritise the citizens in Spain and in Galicia in particular. The response from the Spanish authorities was then studied subsequently and discussed in the delegation. In this delegation of 3, we looked at the decisions of the judiciary and said that there were, looking at the possible issues with money and we looked at things in a very objective way. I have no additional authority. My only responsibility is the one that was conferred upon me by the head of delegation, and that was to give the greatest time possible to the citizens and to be the most objective as possible. When we decided before leaving to not take into account certain petitions, I said that I can't go against the decision of the whole of the group. So that was my objective, and I was looking for consensus constantly. You didn't cut off Mr. Martinez, who spoke for 4.5 minutes instead of 3, so I'd just like an extra 30 seconds to say the consensus is what we were looking for, and I think it's a shame that my colleagues couldn't find the time to search for greater consensus.
Grazie a tutti.
Thanks very much to everybody who's spoken.
Mr. Martinez, sorry, Martinez. Sorry. Mi permetto di esprimere anch'io un commento.
Let me make a comment myself. I'm pleased because now, for the first time, I'm totally in agreement with Ms. Auken and her comments. We don't really need to have this debate. It's pointless. The committee, as sovereign, decided to speak to the legal services, asking them to interpret our rules. That's what we're going to do. This discussion was one which I did allow because I didn't want to obstruct the normal democratic process, but there's no point in going into the specifics of this. Let me just say that my proposal was thrown out by the committee, and I agree with that, but it was, if you like, the result of my experience. There's been some administrative mistakes, the failure to make Mr. Boulon officially the draftsman of the report, of the draft report. We've always done that before. The head of delegation, like when we went to Italy, for example, was put down as rapporteur. When we went to Romania, Bulgaria, the same thing happened. The delegation to Poland, the document that's submitted to committee always has as the name of the rapporteur, and you can go and check this if you want. The texts have all been uploaded to our website. The head of delegation is always the rapporteur, and his name or her name is on the actual text. And my idea was to get everybody involved, and the colleagues who did participate would have been able to come up with an alternative text via amendments. Unfortunately now that procedure isn't open to us because you voted against that, and so what we have to do is wait for the legal services to come up with an opinion on the procedure. We'll be therefore not be able to apply the rather laboriously achieved ways of doing things, but we are now in fact I think undermining the committee's prestige vis-à-vis our citizens. We should send these missions out in order to help our citizens and not actually use them to block the response to citizens who are actually using their petitions to complain about local authorities not doing anything. Now, we're the people who aren't doing anything, and everybody who is being involved in this isn't really looking all that good. So, as I said at the beginning of this morning's session, we are now going to be turning to the legal service, and I will, of course, brief you as to their response. Let's move on to the next